to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
Evening, and we're here for another Monday. It's Monday, June the 13th. It has been 33 days since the National Assembly of St. Kitts and Nevis was dissolved. Our 3 representatives were repatriated to Nevis, and we are fast approaching a federal elections. The Nevis Reformation Party had its grand launch on Friday, June the 3rd at the Villa. We're going to hear a bit about that. And we've got one of the 3 candidates launched with us this evening, Dr. Patricia Bartlett, who's contesting Nevis 9, St. John's, and St. Paul's. We're into very, very, very exciting times in our country. Decision making is at hand. Divisions gather around, whether you're at home or in the diaspora, because the day of reckoning is almost here. We'll take a break and then we'll be back with Dr. Patricia Bartlett on the NRP.
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
Welcome back. And since that big launch on June 3rd, it was a Friday at the Villa, the Nevis Reformation Party has been on the go. They've taken it to Jessop's, Hanley's Road, Brickland, and last night, Craddock Road. It is exciting times, as I've said. But what we'll do first is take a flashback to that launch at the Villa, and we'll hear from one of the masterminds of that exciting event. We're expecting a call from JD Keynes, the dynamic, multi-talented member of the Nevis Reformation Party. But Pat, you've been on the campaign trail. It's getting hot out there.
Good evening, Steve, and thanks for the invitation to join you tonight. It has been exciting. It's something different. This is my first experience of getting on a campaign trail. Previously, I'd never been associated with a party. I'd never really been associated with politics in this way. And so it's a new experience for me. And so far, it's been challenging, I think, sometimes, but we're getting it done, and we're getting some good reviews.
Okay.
The launch, like you said, JD is going to call in and talk more about the launch. But from my perspective, I thought that the launch was well executed, and I thought that we made an impact, because the following day, the compliments were pouring in, and of course it did a little bit for our ego.
I've seen many launches here on Nevis, and I must tell you, it was one of the best executed. So JD Keynes, we're waiting your call so that you can give us greater insight into what went into it, which made it such a stellar event. So I imagine she's on the telephone trying to reach us. And tomorrow it continues up at Kabu Shop, up at Fountain.
Fountain, yes, tomorrow.
And then sometime later in the week, it wheels into your home ground, Brown Hill. You must be anxiously awaiting that.
Well, I'm anxiously awaiting that. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to greet my people and to discuss the issues with my people, because, like I said before, this is just about the issues. It's not about personalities. So when we start to at least present in Brown Hill, it's not about me cursing the premier. I leave that for him. That is his domain. So it would be just focusing on the issues.
Well, I think we've got JD Keynes, the dynamic, multi-talented JD Keynes, on the line. Good evening, JD.
Good evening, Mr. Manners, and good evening, Dr. Bartlett. Are you guys hearing me clearly?
Yeah, maybe you could lift it a little bit more. I know the voice might be getting a little hoarse, but lift it a little bit for us.
Okay, what about now?
Beautiful.
Okay.
Now tell us about the thought process which went into the launch at the Villa Friday, June 3rd.
All right. Well, yes, the NRP launched its federal candidates maybe about a week and a half or so ago. At the Villa grounds, it was done quite differently because it was on a Friday. And I, like Dr. Bartlett said, I think it was very well executed. We had a team in place to ensure that we put on the kind of production that that was in fact executed. And so a lot of the credit has to go to the people who you may not have physically seen, but they were definitely there behind the scenes doing their work. The candidates, of course, were the stars of the evening. They had to multitask in terms of preparing their presentations as well as doing some of the logistical work as well. But we also had like our party organizer, who was the main person in Mr. Virgil Brown, ensuring that everything comes together. And he delegated quite well, making sure that everybody knew what was expected of them. Then we had, of course, our office team and our general secretary and other members of our executive really coming together and making sure that a stellar production was put on. And, of course, we couldn't forget those in the virtual space. And so we provided streaming for that activity. Streaming was done via Facebook as well as YouTube. And, of course, it was carried live on Vaughan Radio and Freedom FM as well. And so all of the parties together helped to make that launch such a success. We wanted to ensure that persons knew that we were very serious about our federal campaign, because we told you a few weeks ago that when we roll out, we'll be rolling heavy. And that is exactly what we did on Friday, June 3rd.
No question about it. You guys came out really, really heavy. Now, Nevis have settled into a rut, the same old, same old. And the theme for the launch was the new direction. Tell us about that.
Yes, the NRP believes that Nevis needs to go on a new direction, not just at the federal level, but at the local level as well. And with the federal campaign preceding the local campaign, we thought, hey, what better time than this? And so we are trying to, I say we, even though I am not one of the federal candidates, but it's a collaborative effort in the Nevis Reformation Party in terms of getting our message out there. And we are saying, look, we are on a course, we are on a path right now that has not brought us much success. And we believe the time has come for us to change the course. We are changing the direction, and the NRP provides a new direction. People have rejected the type of politics that had been taking place in St. Kitts and Nevis, and the NRP is trying to bring about a new direction in terms of its approach to politics. The NRP is trying to bring a new direction as well in terms of its approach to governance. And so the new direction is not just limited to one thing. It speaks to our whole revamping exercise. It speaks to us listening to the people and analyzing what has been happening on the ground and really doing our homework. Having done our homework, we've come up with the concept of a new direction. And so we are just trying to turn things around and put Nevis back on a proper path, hence a new direction.
Now, of course, two of the most important demographics, women well represented, and also youth. It was pleasing to see the youth presenting the profiles of the candidates.
Yes, well, the NRP takes an all-inclusive approach to governance, to moving Nevis forward, and just service to our people. And so you would find that in anything we do, we factor our young people. We have a very dynamic youth arm. It's been led by President Seneldo Willett. And even though Seneldo is not physically here, because the youth arm is so dynamic, we have other members of the youth arm that are out there and ensuring that the work continues in the youth arm. And so our youth will always be front and center of whatever it is we are doing, because we want them to understand that they have a place in the NRP, they have a place in the prosperity for Nevis. And so the youth were there reading the profiles. The youth were there ensuring that some of the logistics were carried out. Our DJ was a young person as well. We had one of the photographers was a young person, and so the young people were doing various things. The young lady who works in our office, I mean, that's a young person as well. She's a young person. So in anything we do, we try to keep the youth front and center. Our candidate slate has a balance as well. Rohan is a young man. I mean, and so we want to ensure that the youth understand that in the NRP there is a place for them.
Now, you mentioned Sineldo and the fact that she's not here. Let me just let our listeners know that she's off representing the Leeward Islands at the West Indies Women's Tournament.
Yes.
And of course, she recently celebrated a birthday as well. So
yes.
I know you're listening, Sineldo. So, belated happy birthday and good evening and more success in the tournament.
Awesome.
Now,
it just goes to show, Mr. Manners, if I can just put a plug in here, that our young people aren't just sitting down waiting for NRP to get in office for them to get jobs and do things in the community. Our young people, the young people who are affiliated with the NRP are people who are already out there contributing to the community. Look at Sineldo and all the great things that she has accomplished and that she has been doing and continues to do. So we are proud of her and her accomplishments, as we are of other members of our youth arm.
Now, you held this whole thing down. You did an amazing job as the host. You brought high energy. Now, I was clinging to my seat when you did that commentary, starting in Charlestown, going up the hill in St. Paul's. Was that something off the cuff, or is something you had written down? Could you replay a bit of that for us tonight?
Mr. Mellors, a lot of these things happen in the heat of the moment, you see, because when you're passionate about something, it comes naturally. It's easy to speak about it. So, for example, I have every confidence in the three persons who have put themselves forward as candidates for the NRP. Dr. Patricia Bartlett in Nevis 9, and Nevis 9, of course, would be extra special to me because I am a voter in Nevis 9. And so we have Dr. Patricia Bartlett in Nevis 9, and I think that she is the most competent person to represent us in Nevis 9 at this point in time. Then we have Rohan Isles in Nevis 10. Every confidence in him, and I keep saying I believe he's going to cause an upset up there. It is something that the NRP hasn't seen in a long time, and I believe that the time has come. And then over in Nevis 11, we have our party leader, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. Again, I believe that she's the most suited person to represent the constituency of Nevis 11 at this point in time. And so because I have the confidence in their ability, because I have the confidence because I know that their hearts are in the right place, it comes naturally for me to speak about them. It's easy for me to tell people that I think that they deserve a chance, because I personally believe that they deserve a chance. And so even though I had notes for some of what was said on June 3rd at that grand launch, a lot of it happened in the heat of the moment because I felt the energy of our candidates. I felt the energy of our supporters and spectators, people who I hadn't seen come out to public meetings in a long, long time, people who I'd never seen at all at a public meeting were there. It was a kind of vibe, a kind of atmosphere that was just unbelievable.
And of course, last night you reveled in it at Craddock Road. Of course, you will soon be the incoming representative for part of that yes. divide last night, because of course Craddock Road divides St. Thomas's and St. Paul's. Yes. It must have been very thrilling for you last night to host as well.
Man, it was. I mean, I have attended the other public meetings, and I feel like it, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to go up there, but I understand that it's time to give the candidates, the federal candidates, their opportunity, their moment to let people know, why they want to come forward. In Nevis 9, because I told you that one has a special place in my heart. I mean, I have to work however I can with Dr. Patricia Bartlett to ensure that together the Nevis Reformation Party can deliver Nevis 9. Okay, and with Charlestown being there, I can't afford to let Charlestown feel that, you know, there isn't that full representation, there isn't that full support behind our candidate, because even though she's physically in St. John, she's seeking to represent the entire constituency of Nevis 9. So I have to go there and show them, listen, Dr. Bartlett has my support, Dr. Bartlett has my endorsement, and so let's rally behind our candidate. And of course, we got to let them know that I'm not sleeping, because right after this federal election, something tells me that we will have a local election. And just as we plan to be successful at the federal level, we plan to be successful at the local level.
Now, finally, you have done many things on the public stage. Valedictorian at UVI, for instance. You know about making speeches. All three candidates brought it. When I saw Dr. Patricia Bartlett with her choreographed moves, Rohan Isles was a revelation. He turned a corner on that night. And of course, Janice Daniel was a rock. She's quiet. She said she can't dance like Pat does, but she brought it in her style. Give us, in a nutshell, your take of how these three candidates presented themselves on that night.
Mr. Manners, before I get to that night, if you thought they were good on that night, I smile, because just this morning I commented to them how impressed I was with the growth that I've seen in each of them. Okay, because just last evening in Quaddock Road, my colleagues were dynamic. I have seen such growth in them. I have no doubt about their ability to put pen to paper. They're all intelligent people. That's a given. But everybody knows it's not easy going up on a stage and delivering. For some, it's more natural than it is for some. And so I have seen considerable growth in our candidates. You said it up to just this morning, and I am just so proud at how seriously they're taking this thing and really trying to hone their craft. As it relates to the launch, the evening of the launch, I'll start in number 9. Dr. Bartlett came forward. And she's easy on the eyes. Somebody who looks good. But on that night, I was like, "Nyam!" But Dr. Bartlett took this thing to another level. She looked radiant, and she looked quite astute and ready. And when she opened her mouth, it was the same thing. When you talk about substance, and that is one of the things that I like. That is one of the things I think sets the NRP apart this time around, because it is all about substance. We're not in a lot of flair. We just go out there and we are delivering, because that is what is in our hearts. And so that is what Dr. Bartlett did. She spoke about what she is seeing and she's not pleased with, and then she went further and said, look, I am not pleased with this. This is what I want to do for you. And she really broke it down. And it was definitely an all-inclusive approach. And I keep telling people, listen, if I'm going into surgery, I want a doctor with me. And so I maintain that she's the doctor with the right prescription. And I am rolling with my doctor. Then when he went up to Rohan Isles in Nevis 10, remember, Rohan and I went to school together. He's just a little bit older than I am. But we were involved in certain things together, like youth parliament and a TV program called Get Real. And so I know Rohan. And I know what he's capable of doing. And so while I was pleased, I was not at all surprised, because that is Rohan Isles. The man is just truly dynamic. And it's like the people of Gingerland have opened the arms to him, because he's been hitting the pavement and doing a lot of the groundwork, and I think that has evoked a certain passion in him, hence why his delivery has really turned up a notch. And then over to our party leader, Dr. Janice Daniel Hodge. Dr. Daniel came on the scene as someone who everybody knew was brilliant. Everybody knew she was brilliant, but not much of a speaker. She likes to stay in the background and execute, but doesn't really like to be in the front and speaking, and that's fine. So she had to do a little bit of shifting to kind of get out of that. And when I look at her and the growth that I've seen in her in terms of her ability to deliver, I am equally pleased with her delivery. Now, Dr. Daniel, if I may say, brings a certain level of skill to this whole thing at the local and federal level. She also, I think, her background and the field in which she studied is something that is ready, that Nevis is ready for, because we do not see that anywhere else. What I tell people, when you look at the candidates of the Nevis Reformation Party, you find a certain balance, a certain varying skill set that collectively can move Nevis forward. The studies that Dr. Daniel Hodge has done these are things that the world is talking about now. So sustainable development and climate change, these are things, and renewable energy, these are things that the world is looking for. These are what the world is pushing right now. We don't have that anywhere else on any other political ticket on the island of Nevis. And I dare say in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so I believe that our party leader brings with us special set of skills, and along with the candidates that we have put forward, I think NRP is a no-brainer right now.
JD Keynes, always a pleasure. And I'm going to say, as Ian Bishop said at the 2020 World Cup in India in 2016 on April 3rd, remember the name. We know you have to take a bit of a step back because the federal has come before the local.
Yes.
But we know you're working behind the scenes, and Nevis One will always remember you. You're so dynamic, so multi-talented. Thank you for the work you do, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manners, and I wish Dr. Bartlett a wonderful show. I'll be listening offline as I go to eat a mango now.
Is it a poly mango? I heard you. I saw you on Facebook saying that if you see the strings between your teeth, nobody bother you.
Nobody bother me.
Enjoy, JD. Thanks.
I'm going to go sneak a mango.
Enjoy. Nice having you.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Good night.
What a dynamic young woman.
Yes.
Now we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the upcoming elections in St. Kitts and Nevis.
But the economy is broken, the government stick. Can the opposition come and take a seat? The debt is high and employment's low, and it's the poor people who taking the blow. I say we tired, we need a revolution. We just can't depend on vaccination. I say we tired, time to pick we self off the floor. Just remember people matter more. So when you hear them talking bull on the radio, people used to matter more. Whether you red, blue, orange or yellow, people used to matter more. But when they needed us for last election, we were always the first option. But now they in and they comfortable. People don't matter no more. Boy, some people may not like this, but people used to matter more. And them made us slow come out of it. People used to matter more.
And we're back. It's 5 minutes to 9 o'clock, and you're listening to Your Voice with the NRP. And we've got one of the surgeons in the house, Dr. Patricia Bartlett. Now, it's so refreshing to hear JD Keynes, so refreshing to hear the NRP candidates. And if we spare a moment for the other side, for 6 weeks, we've been hearing nothing but cuss, blame, and fair share. People in the public are saying the other side is sounding like a stock record. And one of the things which baffles me, the call for fair share has been constant, but I haven't heard a single prescription coming from the mouth of the Premier. And I say the mouth of the Premier, because don't fool yourself, the other two followed, but their hearts were never in it. I know, because people are telling me, they're telling them on the street, they signed for it, but they didn't agree with this foolish action to bring a government down which they claim had been doing good things, was the best political idea. It must be like stock music to your ears to hear the same thing coming day after day for 6 weeks.
Well, well, Steve, from the time the Premier decided to withdraw from the federal arrangement, we saw where it was going to go. You know, he had no legitimate reason for exposing the people of Nevis to this kind of crisis, a constitutional crisis, at this point in time. The timing is bad. There was no good reason for it, because what he came away saying was that Nevis was not getting its fair share. But we would have had discussions up to December, and he would have settled on an amount that at that point in time he thought was good enough for Nevisians. So he accepted $45 million in December. He said, you know what, this is good enough for Nevis people, this is our share. No noise. Then comes the first quarter of 2022. After he would have already put it in the budget, he would have, against the income that he would have included that in, he would have already appropriated the expenditure to match. And now he's going to come in the first quarter and say to us that we are not getting our fair share. But Nevisians are not stupid people. We are bright people, you know. I'm not amazed really, because I've accepted the fact that we are 98% literate. And not only that, we're doing better than that. We are a set of people who have decided that we're going to enter the realm of critical thinking. So maybe in years past he might have been able to, because we were so relaxed as a people and trusting, he might have been able to pull one off. But he can't do it this time, because it is obvious it had nothing to do with the people of Nevis. That call for fair share is just, as I would have termed it within recent times, it's just a red herring. They brought up the term and we'll just use it for convenience. It is a red herring, because we know the reason why he's making a fuss now is because he wants money that he doesn't have to account for. Because for a set of people who like to leak, they have been leaking everything. We are still not seeing the letter that he said that he would have presented to the Prime Minister requesting additional amounts. And even then, after he would have requested the initial amount, the extra in the first quarter, he has not come to Nevis people and say, well, we have gotten an extra, whatever it was, because he doesn't think that he should have to account for the money. But everybody should jump behind him and say, oh yes, the issue is fair share, as if we can't see that it is not about fair share for Nevisians. Because it has never been about fair share for Nevisians. I made the point last night, and I think it worth repeating. It was never about fair share for Nevision. Look at all of the actions he would have taken over the years. It was never about fair share for Nevisians. So we are going to buy that. Just within recent times, somebody leaked, because they like to leak. Somebody leaked a letter, or well, a set of transactions that would have occurred as it relates to the honorarium that was being, given out for the people associated with the task force for COVID. And on it, we were seeing people in St. Kitts getting things like $27,000, and their counterpart in Nevis, holding similar positions, were getting less than half of that. And the Premier would have been one in cabinet to vote to pass that. If indeed he would have been someone who is interested in the fair share for Nevision, because I know that I would have made noise. I would not have signed off on somebody in St. Kitts doing basically the same thing as someone in Nevis, and it's an honorarium. So I'm not even going to match how many hours you put in, because it was not based on merit. You're saying you're going to give somebody an honorarium. He's like, okay, I appreciate what you would have done. I think maybe you might deserve more, but I'm just giving you a little something. But Nevisians would have had to get the same amount as somebody in St. Kitts. That is what you call fair share. So if you're in the mode of agitating on behalf of the people of Nevis for everything that is being shared, we ought to get a fair or equitable share. So fair share is a convenient argument that he has been using, At first, he tried to suggest that NRP is not for fair share. Now, in this day and age, with so much information out there, where is it anywhere stated that NRP is not for fair share for divisions? NRP has always been negotiating positions so that Nevis could always benefit, but in a legal way. But what I find, and it is troubling, it is very troubling, what I've picked up is that it seems as if, to me, this CCM-led NIA are lawless people. They have no regard for the law. I mean, if they're going to disrespect the Constitution, it goes to show. And then you cannot ever get a straight answer. Because when people are asking, okay, you said fair share, what about accountability? You know, what have you done with what you got? Then the answer was, do not worry about what we get.
How much Syncits get?
Worry about what Syncits get. That is a distraction. So this notion about him standing up in the middle of a storm, an economic storm, in the middle of the hurricane season, at the start of the hurricane season, these are all things that are going to make us vulnerable as a people in Nevis. Because you know what was also revealed? We don't even have a dime saved. Every country probably has a reserve. We don't have that. These guys got $400 million and couldn't save a dime. So if something were to happen, if for argument's sake, the Prime Minister decided that he's not going to send any more money because they fall out with him and he's not going to send any more money for this month and next month until leading up to the election, where is that going to leave me, these people? What fair share? So we're asking, what is the basis of this argument? Come clean, because most of us would have already arrived at the conclusion. But for those who are still struggling with the concept, because for some reason they just cannot believe that their superhero is not really the man, you know, they thought that he was. For those people who are still stuck, you know, in that dilemma, because it's a dilemma. If you're still there and still think that he's a superhero, you have a problem, you know. So I'm just asking him, please, for the few people who are still following him, at least level with them. Let them know it is not about fair share. It was never about fair share for divisions, and don't drag NRP in that. Do not blame us, because we believe that Nevis should always be fairly represented. Times pass, NRP in government has demonstrated that that is our primary focus. And I don't think that our principle of engagement is going to change at this point. It has always been about the people. It's not about me. And I keep telling people I am good, and those people who know me would know that I am good, because I am not high maintenance. I am good at where I'm at. The fact that I have moved to get involved in active politics means something. And so I would not accept the fair share argument as something that he wants to divide Syncits and Nevis on. And we need to go to the heart of the matter, and we need to discuss those issues.
Now, the argument or the discussion has moved from the ridiculous to the sublime. He said he was walking, canvassing in Cahoon, and there were folks asking him, well, why after 7 years you're coming with this? And he had been likening it to a relationship, a man and a woman, that you're putting up with the man or the woman for a period of time, and then you reach a point, you said no more. But this is a nation. This is a country. This is 50,000 people. This is about 13,000 people in Nevis. The man and the woman can maybe go their separate ways or reconcile. Your man from Brown Hill, Stocky, in the Maryland, Washington area, took him up on that. You cannot be making frivolous arguments when you're dealing with the health, the sustainability of a nation, with a relationship between a man and a woman. You can't do that.
Well, it was an unfortunate analogy that he was trying to use. I don't know if he really thought that people were going to buy that, because even in relationships, I guess maybe he's signifying the actions a man would take, because a woman wouldn't take that kind of action. A woman would not leave the secure environments of a home that she would have created, go outside of that with all the uncertainties, having not planned for it, having not stashed away something. If you're going to make, you have to contemplate your moves. You can't just react. So women sometimes stay in relationship that they ought not to, but they buy, well, once you buy in time. But you must have a strategic plan, which is what we did not have. Because even those who are following him, and I'm always asking, is there not someone amongst them who could say, come back? Apparently not.
Well, from the gates of hell.
Apparently, apparently not. But the thing is, when you're going to go out and, liken to a relationship, you need to understand, even in a relationship, when you're going to leave, like I said, you make provisions for leaving. It's foolhardy for you to just get up and just leave in the middle of the night, not knowing where you're going. And I think I would have used an analogy here, saying that you're going to go leave the relationship you're in to go form a relationship with somebody else who homeless like you, because he has now left the relationship within the team unity construct, has gone now to align themselves permanently with Pam, and the way it is shaking out, and even one of the insiders would have said at that time when they were going through the turmoil, that it's not likely that Pam would even be able to retain more than one seat. So why do you make those kind of rash decisions? And like I said, and you would have rightly pointed out, pull Nevisions along in your saga, because that is where we're at now. Times are so uncertain now. Things that ought to be addressed, are not being addressed because there's nothing happening. Nobody's paying any attention to the fact that you have people out there who have been struggling for 2 years without any relief. Those are things that required his full attention, but he cannot focus on them now, because apart from having regrets, I would imagine he has many for pulling out of a relationship that you could have worked with for at least a little longer, and at the expense of the people. And so I'm hoping that he's reflecting, recognizing that it was a rash decision. But that is when people are not ready yet to serve others, because you should consider the implications for the impact it's going to have on your people other than yourself. Because this thing about relationships, so what? People live in homes and share things, and sometimes they don't even speak. You don't have to be on that kind of thing. I'm not sending you in bed with the man. You don't have to get to that level. It is about making sure that you negotiate, always in a position to negotiate, remembering the reason why you're there is because people put their trust in you to represent them. So you are acting proxy for these people. So you ought to act with a level of maturity that would say, let me consider what my actions is going to mean for my people. And I'm glad that Stuckey would have pointed that out. That's how vulnerable people are. You're very forthright. If you're wrong, you're wrong, And so I'm glad that he was held accountable for his actions. And I think at the polls, and I'm hoping that I'm reading it correctly, that people are going to take that into consideration, that his actions have not been within their best interests, and would vote accordingly.
Now, we don't know how things will shake down in St. Kitts, but I'll be damned if I'm the Nevision Premier and find myself following someone who absented himself from cabinet, the main decision-making body, on the pretext of a police report. I'd be damned. But you know what's puzzling about this? And I know you've spoken about it. You have said that the Charlestown Accord has outlived its usefulness. I've heard him say on several programs that he takes up the Charlestown Accord from time to time. And so he said, you know what I look for? I look for the signatures. And so there is Sean Kenneth Richards. There is Vance Winkworth Amory. And he used the other name with emphasis. There is Timothy Sylvester Harris. Now, by the Premier's own reckoning, Timothy Harris is gone. Nobody will ever join with him again. Vance Amory passed away, sadly. So there is only one signatory left. Have Nevision stopped to consider why until this day? By my reckoning, 1 month away from the federal election, because I've done my calculation. And I think we're going to the polls on Friday, July 15th. Monday, July 18th at the latest. So you can mark that down and see if I'm right. But why hasn't the Premier of Nevis, if he believes so much in Sean Richards, come and sign a new Charlestown Accord? The one which was signed previously, which didn't bear his signature, is of no more moment. It is extinct. And he likes the 17th of the month. So he signed, well, the Charlestown Accord was signed on December 17th, 2014. Then he went to an election just before Christmas, December 17, in 2017, I think it was, or 18. 2017. Now the 17th is this Friday. I challenge you, Mr. Premier, since you so believe that Sean Richards will deliver to you all the goods, you put all your hope on him, come here on Friday afternoon and sign a new accord which has your signature on it. Because the one which you talk about now is of no moment. And I would suggest that you don't go to the courthouse steps, because you could easily slip inside to concretize it. You can take Sean Richards down to the Malcolm Gishard Pinnis Park, because I'm sure Malcolm Gishard would not have fell for your folly. So let's get the Charlestown Accord, a new dispensation with the signatures of Mr. Mark A.G. Brantley and Mr. Sean Kenneth Richards. But you know why he hasn't signed it? He's leaving a door open. So if, as you say, Sean Richards and the People's Action Movement wins only 1 or 2 seats, he's got an option. It's called throwing Sean Richards under the bus. But so much for that. Now, JD Keynes gave you a very glowing tribute of your presentation. Let's focus on us. Tell us a bit about what went into your launch, your speech, some of the key points you made.
Well, the preparation for going into the launch, really, it was a hard experience. You know, it was searching for the right issues to present to, you know, all people, because sometimes we get a little emotional and carried away on some issues, and then they don't really mean that much, you know, to people. And the expectation, I thought that people wanted to hear something uplifting. People wanted to hear hope. People didn't want necessarily to always to be hearing about fair share, but there was no recommendation or any resolution put forward as to how we were going to get it, because we're still hearing issues like that. And people wanted to hear, I thought, you know, what would you do at that level as a parliamentary representative to represent our interests. So I think that all of those factored into, you know, the writing when I was penning, you know, the information, you know, for my speech. And then it just flowed, you know, but it wasn't about me, you know, and what I could achieve when I go there on the big stage. It was just really about reflecting and thinking that people would want, if I were a voter, those are the things that I would want addressed. And so I tried my best, you know, to deliver on those issues. So it wasn't something difficult, because we live here, we know the circumstances, we hear the noise, we hear the fluff, and we just have to tune out some things, you know, and recognize that we need to focus on the things that would make us a better island, a better partner in the relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis. And I think that those are the issues that I really wanted to focus on.
It's ironic that at this time in our history, the man who has told us forever to ignore the noise has become the greatest noise maker. And I urge the people of Nevis to take him seriously this time around. This rah-rah business can't take precedence over really important stuff. You know, people around the Caribbean are following this election very, very closely. One of my regional friends said to me today that when he looked at the Nevisian landscape, that a premier could come to you on April 16th, throw his hands up and say, I've lost my way, I've failed. That on May the 10th, he could be fired from the federal parliament, according to the Prime Minister, for poor performance. that in the months or the weeks which have elapsed since, he has brought nothing substantial to the people. He hasn't up to this moment admitted that it was a mistake not to make sure it was more concrete. In fact, one of his colleagues, Lindsey Grant, on a program put on by the People's Action Movement last Tuesday, was asked the question, well, what about Nevis's fair share? And he said that basically it is something we have to look at very seriously, and we must do it in a way which not only serves us for today, but into the future. Mark Brantley hasn't got to that point as yet. He hasn't even acknowledged after 7 years that it was frivolous at best to go on a whim, on a handshake, and now come to tell us that Timothy Harris is the worst person in the world. Well, I'm going to say again, it takes two to tango, and in this occasion, 3. 33.3% of the blame belongs to Premier Mark Brantley. 33 1/3 belongs to Sean Richards. And 33 1/3 belongs to Timothy Harris. None of them go free on this score. We'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll hear more from Dr. Patricia Bartlett.
I say we tired, Mark say keep the momentum. Oh, Mr. Premier, where we get the energy from? I say we tired, time to protect the poor. Just remember, people matter more.
17 minutes after 9, and you're listening to Your Voice with the NRP, held here every Monday evening from 8:30 to 10. We've got our first caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Representative, the Honorable Patricia. Oh, I'm saying Honorable Patricia. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Okay, question. I would like you to explain something further to me. And it says Social Security Reserve would be depleted by 2040 if we don't reform the system now by extending the pensionable age to 65. Could you explain that a little more to me, please? Thank you.
Certainly.
Thanks for the question. Yes, Steve, last night at the meeting at Kodok Road, I introduced the concern, because it is a concern, in that it has been at least put to the cabinet. It would have been already put to the cabinet, the condition or the status of Social Security. From the last actuarial report, which was done in 2021, I think it was published in 2021. And this is something that routinely is done at Social Security to explain to us the health of the scheme that we have been paying into, and has promised us some at the end of, when we get to pensionable age, that these are the benefits that we would be able to get. However, every Social Security scheme, it's around here, the way they have been structured, and based on the dynamics of the population or working population, they've almost always run into a snag as it relates to sustainability and longevity of the scheme. And so in examining ours, the report was made 10 years ago that we ought to reform our scheme, or else we are going to run out of money before a certain date. At that time, it was a little further away. It was not 2040, it was a little further away. But based on what has been happening within recent times and the demands on Social Security, and the fact that we've had so many challenges in the workplace that you don't have as many contributors as we used to have, it has been determined that if we continue to pay out the benefits that we're paying out now at the rate that we're paying them, and we continue to take in what we are now, because so many people are not working and can't contribute to the scheme, if this continues, then by 2040, all of the money that we had in reserve to pay these benefits, particularly the age benefits, would have been depleted. And so the recommendation is a recommendation that has been recycled. Every actuarial report would be pointing to the same thing: you have to reform, you have to reform. And we have had 13 of those up to this point from the time the scheme started. This is the 13th actual report that came out in 2021. And it is glaring at this point, because what has happened is, in 2017, when in 2017 you would have had 20 age pensioners who have been to every 100 insured persons. Today we have over 25 pensioners, age pensioners, to the same 100 of insured persons. So it means that things are getting tighter and tighter. So there's some things that could be done in order for us to prolong it, but our politicians have not had the courage to explain to people and take the action that is required to make sure that we have a sustainable fund beyond 2040. So I brought up the issue for us to start thinking about and discussing, not to scare people, because the thing is, knowledge is power. And once you know what your situation is, then you should be able to at least find mitigating measures to put in place. One of the recommendations made by the actual report would have been extending the age for pensionable age from 62 to 65, as well as increasing the contribution rate by 2%. Now, 2% may not be significant for someone who is making a lot of money. It just might be for someone who is struggling and could hardly make ends meet at this point. But the thing is, we can't act in isolation. You get that information. It can't be, okay, the sky is falling in. It means that we could do other things in order to mitigate. So even though you are going to push the age from 62 to 65, and that is something that is proposed to be done gradually. You're not going to do it one day, you get up and say, today is the day. So there's there is a schedule that has been suggested as to how we could get to 65. Every 2 years, you increase the age by one year, and so it takes a while before we get there. But the people who are retiring ought not to be scared, because people are living longer. What government has to do, and they need to lead the way, is to recognize that people are living longer and more productive lives. And to accommodate that, you don't throw out someone out of the system at the age of 60 when potentially they can serve for an additional 5 years. Why put that stress on Social Security? Because for each person, let's say you were to have someone who was making $4,500. By the time they retire, at that, if that is the rate they've been retired at, they'll get about 60% of that as their pension. So it means if you take out that one person out of the system, you need at least 5 other people coming in at the lower level to be able to pay them the 60% of the $4,500, plus make the contribution to sustain that over time. So it doesn't make sense for us to be trading one demographic that is not involved at the productive level that they could be. Meaning, it doesn't make any sense for you to say somebody who has 6 years left or 5 years left in the system, you take them out at that point to bring in somebody who is just now leaving school at 18. Because there's a lot of pressure, bringing to bear on the Social Security scheme. Maybe the government coffers may be getting a little ease, but as it relates to Social Security, because these people would be contributing less, it takes many more of them to at least be able to pay for the pension of the one that you're taking out of the system. So it doesn't make any sense. At least we have to start thinking about what we do when we do things. So what the issue should be is for us to focus on job creation. We have to expand the job opportunities so that we include more people in the pool of those who are paying in order for us to get to a comfortable level. So people ought not to be scared if you hear that the pension age is going to increase, because if you are allowed to work longer, then your pension, you can have a deferred benefit there are other options that could be available to people. So people ought not to be scared. What you ought to be scared of is if you do nothing. And that is the point at which we are. That people seem to be, because it's a political thing, they decide not to do anything because they can't sell it to the average person.
Hold your thought there. We've got our second caller of the evening. Good evening, caller.
Good evening, Steve.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Bartlett.
Good evening.
Dr. Bartlett, you have been helping a number of women to cope with the challenges of...
Lift your voice a bit, caller.
You have been helping a number of women to cope with the challenges of unemployment, the challenges of low incomes, and the challenges of coping in an environment where we have had COVID and so on. I would like you to share with them with the rest of the public how, by electing you, you can develop a national program to help women cope and, of course, lift them out of lift them away from the challenges they face with taking care of themselves and their families. How the voting for you, so then you want the women to vote for you because you've started a program. Share with us how that program could become a national program to lift women and by providing opportunities for training, opportunities for employment, opportunities for small business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure, Dr. Bartlett, you want to continue your thought and then pick that up? Or?
Yes, so let me just finish. So based on the work that would have been done, it has been decided, get back to the original question, it has been decided that by 2040, if we do nothing, the scheme is going to go broke. We don't want that because people would have contributed and you're looking forward to when you retire, you have your social security benefit. So it's almost as if you were to go to the hospital and they say if you don't cut off your big toe, you're going to lose your foot. And some people decide, they're not going to cut off the toe. You have to make the harsh decision to make sure that you do what is best in your best interest for you to get the best medical outcome. Likewise, if we do not institute these changes that are required at this point, it means that a lot of us would suffer a little later. And it is not fair that our politicians have been just kicking the can down the road, not explaining what is going on, not making any effort to widen the pool so people could be more comfortable for us to get an extension on this thing. Because what has happened is that a lot of the social security money has been, and people get concerned that it has been used for investment with just low returns on it. That if you were to, at least most of the housing schemes around here that have used social security monies, you're hearing things like 5%, those kind of, marginal returns on your monies.
We got another caller, Dr. Bartlett. Good evening. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening, Mr. Manson. How are you?
Very well. Could you turn your radio down, please?
Yes, I will. Let me just turn it down. One second. Yes. I would want to offer. Hello?
Yeah, we're listening.
I think the solution is a combination of a multiplicity of issues. One, we have a bludgeoning public service that I believe a significant reduction in the public service would be a contributing factor to the maintenance or the sustenance of Social Security. Now, that cannot be done alone by itself. There needs to be sufficient attraction for FDI, what we call foreign investment, all right, so that more jobs are being created in the private sector and take the burden off of the public sector. And one of the combination, we have a mandatory, I believe it's mandatory retirement age of 55. In well-developed countries, that age is 65, 10 years later. So then, if you have folks retiring at 55, and they're eligible for Social Security, I believe at 65.
62.
What happens to them in that gap, that 10-year gap? what income are they going to be able to depend on if they're no longer employed but can't collect Social Security for 10 years? I think there are a number of issues that need to be looked at when we think of the long-term sustenance of Social Security. One, the retirement age, my thoughts are eluding me right now. But nonetheless, we need much more. We need much more foreign investment as opposed to the bludgeoning of the public service, and take the burden off of the public service and do a reduction in goodness, my thoughts are eluding me. But okay, but I think I've made some points.
You have.
Combination of issues.
Mm-hmm.
The survival of Social Security is not any one issue. A serious combination that needs to be examined for the long-term sustenance of Social Security.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bartlett. You've got quite a bit on your plate.
Yeah, but he made some valid points. But at the end of the day, if we don't have more people contributing, if the rate continues in that you have more, because people are living longer, you have more pensioners on the scheme and less contributors, and the contributors starts or continue to diminish, then we have an issue. And it has already been pointed out that we need to act, and we need to act swiftly. Apparently, within the OECS, it seems that we are the last ones who still holding on to, non-reform. Everyone else would have reformed their system, and so every time you reform, it is in a view to extending it, the longevity of the system. Until you get challenged again, then you make the necessary adjustment. We've been going through a rough period in that you had a lot of people who have been getting social services assistance, and those people, I don't think that what they get is subjected to a deduction of Social Security. So if when the COVID hit, we had lost 3,000 jobs, it means that we had 3,000 less contributors to Social Security. And so they've just been paying out. It's one thing to say, well, cut your administrative costs, but it would not be significant, for us to be able to prolong this system. We have to reform. But to accommodate the reform, we must be doing more, like the caller said, as it relates to private investment, as it relates to widening the job opportunities on island, to make sure that the system is robust and it grows.
Hold it there, Dr. Bartlett. Back we go to the phone. No, we have lost that one. So you can continue your thought there.
So job opportunity is something that we have to explore, and we keep hearing terms like foreign direct investment, but I think that we have the potential of our own in the diaspora to participate in nation building, and I don't think that we have been exploring it. We have not been trying to get these people together with all their resources, not only the education that they would have invested in, but even some of the some of their financial assets. You need to be able to commit some of that to nation building. It's all well and good to send back remittances and make sure that your family are taken care of, but in terms of forward thinking, in terms of building Nevis, we need to engage more of our people in the diaspora to get into projects. Use Nevis as a place where you can get an extra home, invest in a home here that you can probably use for B&B, and Airbnb, be a part of that program, or you can do timeshare. We need public-private partnerships in order for us to be able to do things differently and be able to make an impact. We shouldn't have to be here sitting down and waiting on monies from Europe, or from China or wherever. Our people ought to have some degree of interest in the development of our own country, irrespective of where we call home at this point in time. And I think some of the monies that are overseas could very well find its way here if we were to find some projects that people thought were meaningful and impactful projects.
We've got another caller on the line. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Could you lift your voice, please?
Yes, absolutely. I just want
and you still got a radio playing in the background.
I just want to read. Let me just hold on. Let me take care of that. I want to reiterate the importance of FDI, because yes, we need more local investment of local funds. However, when we do that, all we're doing, we're just stirring funds that are already in the economy. When we get an injection of foreign capital, it causes the local economy to grow much, much faster, because it now has access to funds that were not in the economy before. And it widens the employment opportunity. And again, we have this public service that is just there with folks that are not accomplishing, in other words, who are not earning their pay. And I want to be frank about that. If those folks, there are many folks in the public sector who, if they shift to the private sector and they don't change their habits, they won't last very long. So we ought not to be protecting this type of non-productivity we have in the public sector. And so yes, I want to put in a strong point for the attraction of foreign direct investment. It would change our employment culture. It would change the way people think. Just this morning, I was coming from a distance, and about 5 minutes to 8 o'clock, I saw a young lady 5 or 6 miles away from Charlestown who should be in Charlestown working at 8 o'clock. I mean, that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes to 8. That young lady is just coming through her gate to go to Charlestown to an 8 o'clock job. If that lady were in the private sector, she would have been there on that job 5 minutes to 8 waiting for the doors to open. So FDI does have its benefits. It changes the employment culture and the way people think about their own personal productivity. Thanks.
Thank you. But Dr. Bartlett, Dr. Daniel Hart said last night that all Nevisians should be alarmed that we have a premier who have gone to the far reaches of the world, who once said he would like to sit in a room and throw a dart and it could land someplace where we have diplomatic relationships with. But Nevisians cannot point to anything on Nevis in reference to what this caller is talking about. Investors coming in to boost our economy. Nothing that we can show. The investors have not come ashore.
Well, that indeed is interesting, and it is concerning in that we have NIPA, which is the investment arm. They're the ones who, I understand that the lady who was involved with the beach, right, I understand that she's been, paid more money than the premier himself, in order to advise us and in order to attract these foreign direct investments, as the caller would have alluded to before. But we haven't seen any evidence of that level of engagement from the outside world, and we've been paying these exorbitant contracts. I understand she's on contract, and I'm like, where is it? It is one thing to expect the premier to be able to bring something back. Yes, it's an expectation. Most of the times he doesn't travel as the premier, he travels as the foreign, whatever minister, the foreign minister for the federal government, so I don't know if he's necessarily minded to do the people's business of Nevis when he goes on those travels. But having engaged...
Hold it there, we've got another caller, Dr. Bartlett. Good evening, welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. Dr. Bartlett, I am speaking some things into existence here over you. When you are elected on July the 18th, would you be able to make any changes or amend clause 110 to include the CBI and other non-tax revenue that should be shared between St. Kitts and Nevis?
Thank you, caller.
Thank you for the question. Definitely, we know that is an issue that Nevisians have been engaged in within recent times. We cannot let Nevisians down. What we're going to have to do is to re-enter or re-engage at the level at which we should have been in any event, in that we should have never taken ourselves out of the constitutionally dictated position or arrangement of paying into a federal pool and getting a portion of it, because that was, I think, a prudent thing for us to do, because obviously there will be years when we'll be putting in more than we're getting out, and then likewise it will be years that you will be taking out more than you're putting in. At least there's a surety that you would always be getting something. You would always be getting, I would imagine, just enough to pay what you're required to pay, and you could probably keep the debt down. So having engaged in the conversation, since you insist that it ought to be the only issue, we have said, let us take that off of the table as an issue. We're going to deal with it. We have a solution for it. We are going to propose to get it, the Constitution amended. Whatever it takes, we are going to make the proposal to get it done. That is a commitment that we have made in speaking to people, because even though some people would have been floating out there the idea that you can just use a regular law, go into Parliament and pass that, and it may work for a while. But what we are saying is, it is difficult for us to amend the Constitution to get it included, and likewise it would be doubly difficult to take us out of that arrangement once we follow the dictates of the provisions of the Constitution. So that is a proposal that we are making. We will be selling that to the divisions. If you really want us to make sure that we resolve this issue, you send the NRP to Bastia, because we already have it worked out that that is one of the issues that would be first and foremost on our agenda, on our legislative agenda, because we recognize when you elect parliamentarians, you want for them to go into Parliament and pass laws.
We've got another caller on the line. It's been a busy evening. Good evening. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Manuel, and I want to say a special good evening to my area representative, Dr. Bartlett.
Welcome.
Amen.
Mr. Manuel, we are in the midst of an election, and I am not surprised at all that the Premier of Nevis and his colleagues wasn't able to get anything done for and on behalf of the people of Nevis. And one of the main reasons for me saying this, Mr. Manners, we lived in Nevis and we see the politics go and come every 5 years, local election in Nevis, vice versa the federal elections. But after elections are over, whosoever wins hit the ground with the intention of start getting things done. Most of these political parties create a manifesto, and the manifesto is to say to the people that this is in a symbol, a contractual arrangement of the things that we are going to do if we are elected to office for the next 5 years, whatever. What I noticed something from the time Mark A.G. Bradley was elected into government, the man never stopped campaigning. He is the Premier of Nevis and he's operating as if he is in the opposition. I wonder if anybody else sees.
Everybody sees that.
The man is the Premier of the country, and instead of operate as the Premier, he operates as if he's still in the opposition. And I've been noticing it, and I've been saying it to a few people all along. I said, this young man is not going to get it right. He don't seem to understand that he's the Premier now. He is no longer in the opposition. Every Wednesday night, he on the radio, and all he do is to take out a text and NRP. NRP is in the opposition. NRP did what they had to do when they were there. This is your time now to be driving, and you still want to be sitting in the passenger seat. However, I think that the people of Nevis gets a chance now to get it right. Secondly, the campaign now is not like the campaign of yesteryear. Mr. Manners, I'm very, very pleased with the candidates that we have put forward. No printing of no leaflet and putting on no bib on nobody and dropping them in nobody's yard with all kind of Nancy stories behind them. You have credible people now standing in front of you, and the Premier cannot debate proper issues as to what he's going to do to move the country forward, because he does not know how to do so. I'm saying to Dr. Bartlett, and likewise Dr. Daniel Hodge, and the young man who I know as well, who would have given his life to educate the young people more so in the St. Thomas's area, but he come across to Jindaland now. I am hoping that the people see the qualities that you guys have to offer and embrace it by voting for the Nevis Reformation Party. Keep up the good works. Let's press on.
Thank you very much. And he mentioned how every Wednesday night for 2 hours it's taking out his texts on the NRP. But it's not only on the NRP, it's on hapless callers. I am alarmed on a Wednesday night whenever a caller calls in to challenge him. He calls them clowns and said that they should go for an audition with Abernathy Liebert. People are having so much fun in this campaign. You know what somebody told me today? That the first troop to go and sign up for Culturama should be a troop from the CCM. They said it should consist of 2 parts. The first part should be called The Three Blind Mice. I think we've got a caller, so we'll get back to that. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Good evening, Mr. Manners. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Dr. Bartlett.
Good evening.
Mr. Manners, there are persons on Nevis attacking Dr. Bartlett and the NRP for indicating that they are not too interested in holding portfolios in our federal government. Now, Simeon Daniel held portfolio in the federal government and basically walked away from it because he recognized that having a portfolio in Nevis was preventing him from looking after the affairs of Nevis. Joseph Parry, likewise, I think it was 2003, made that decision that he cannot be a part of a federal cabinet and fully represent the people of Nevis as a leader. So he walked away. Vance Army for 14 years as the Premier of Nevis refused to join with any party in St. Kitts who offered him position to be in their cabinet, whether it was Kennedy Simmons or Denzel Douglas. He did not want to do it because he said that his whole intention was to look after the people of Nevis. We sent 3 representatives to St. Kitts who claimed that from the position of the federal government benches that they can deliver to Nevis, and they failed at it. So it's a clear indicator to me, starting from Dr. Daniel down to this present fiasco that we are facing, that a Nevisian sitting in a federal government being directed by a prime minister from St. Kitts have a difficult time or had a difficult time to represent Nevis from those benches. And so I am agreeing with the NRP's position that when we elect people to parliament, we elect people to make laws, to amend laws, to, as it were, repeal laws if they have to repeal them. But the sole focus is to make laws that will benefit the people of Nevis. And I highly praise and recommend the position that the NRP candidates are taken, that their primary focus is to go into Basti and to make sure that laws are in place where the people of Nevis will benefit, rather than sitting down in a cabinet like these 3 stooges did, and according to them were dictated to by a dictator, and therefore was unable to get anything done for us, and come back and say to us that they lost their way. Congratulations, Dr. Bartlett, for your vision and for your team, and I'm hoping that the people of Nevis will see your vision, will understand what the party is saying, and throw their weight behind the Nevis Reformation Party. Else, if they think that way in a bind at this time, we'll find ourselves in a greater bind. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've only got about 10 minutes, and so very quickly, let me complete that story the person told me today. They said the first segment of the troop will be called The Three Blind Mice. And of course, the caller kind of explained why. That anybody who could say mash up a government and turn around and tell you re-elect them again have to be misguided. Have to be that they have no vision. But the second part of the truth, they said, is attributed to you, Dr. Bartlett, because of a little to and fro between yourself and the CCM candidate on the Let's Talk program. They said the second segment of the troop should be called the Sledgehammer Gang, because they know how to mash up governments, mash up coalitions, bring federations to a halt, and of course the hospital project where they're busy sledgehammering. The person said further that the troop will be led by dancer Eric Evelyn because of his superior dancing skills. The architect and chief wielder of the sledgehammer will be next, followed by the premier and his sidekick Troy, and they even told me that the female candidate will go nowhere their comedic display. Isn't that an exciting troop for Culturama?
It's interesting. But if I may take a few minutes to just to piggyback on what the caller was saying, and related to, and the thing is, the premier is good at that. He's good at trying to confuse people. Because when I was here, I made a statement, I would want to not to be in both cabinets at the same time, holding portfolios in both, because it didn't make any sense for the people of Nevis. And let me explain for the people who got concerned when he went and tried to distort it. I don't know if he did it just because he was ignorant, because he has no clue how these things work, or he was just being malicious and just wanted to confuse people. But let me clarify, since the question has been asked, as it relates to someone who sits in the cabinet in Nevis holding a portfolio. It means you have been assigned a ministry to look after. You must be the head of the policy direction of that ministry. The monies that are assigned to you, they are assigned to programs, because when you do the budget, what you do, you come up with programs and you fund the programs that ought to be executed under that particular ministry. It is specific. So money is allocated for agriculture, specifically for agriculture. You can't use it for Ministry of Communications. So that is how budgets work, and that is the confine which you have to work as a minister. Doing that in Nevis has no bearing on what you do in St. Kitts, and vice versa. So if you were to go to St. Kitts and hold a portfolio in St. Kitts, money is allocated in St. Kitts specifically for the programs and the plans that are executed under the Ministry of Agriculture in St. Kitts. That is why when the minister Jeffers came from Nevis, went to St. Kitts and thought that he could duplicate the same thing that he's doing in Nevis, collect 2 salaries, but putting aside the extra salary. The thing is, when they execute plans in St. Kitts, Nevisian farmers who would have voted for him ought not to think that they would get the same relief, because he has no authority to use the whatever programs in St. Kitts or the benefits that accrue under the programs that are executed in St. Kitts to benefit the farmers in Nevis. So you in Nevis vote for him, he goes to St. Kitts, and whatever he does there, you cannot benefit from it. What is the point?
Fix up there for the farm.
But that again is a different issue that we could get into. But the point is, though, if you go into the cabinet, you hold no portfolio, you can decide what special programs you can get involved with, which would not tie you down on a daily basis in the running of a ministry that could indeed benefit Nevis people. So you get to vote in cabinet, you get to sit in cabinet and make decisions. That is where you can make decisions that could impact the people of Nevis. But to tie yourself down to the daily running of the business in St. Kitts that has no benefit whatsoever to the people in Nevis is foolishness. And I can't understand why people think that they have done this and it hasn't worked, why they don't think that it is time for them to do something different. And so when you have people who can critically think about the way things could be done, show up on the scene and say, look guys, you have not been doing it well. This is how you ought to approach it. They can't deal with that. And I don't know if maybe it is a misogynistic kind of thing, that they don't think that a woman could advise them, but that is indeed the way to go. Whether it is me or anybody else, I would always suggest that that is the way we go, because Nevis does not stand to go with a portfolio. And I want to just add this last point.
Before you do, we don't want to keep our caller longer. Caller, you've got to make it quick, but welcome to Your Voice with the NRP.
Okay, just quickly. I recall back in the 1980s, I was passing through Toronto when I was able to attend a meeting by a Nevis group where the late Simeon Daniel and his then permanent secretary, Joseph Parry, was addressing divisions and what they've accomplished in getting the Four Seasons here. Four Seasons is headquartered in Toronto. And I'm saying with the amount of traveling that the present premier have done, what connection has he made or intends to make to get some foreign investor to make a significant dent in the economic landscape of Nevis? That is what somebody needs to ask him.
Thank you very much. Now, Pat, I know you wanted to go through so much. I know you wanted to talk about the National Health Insurance Scheme. There'll be in other times as well, but we've only got 4 minutes, and I want you to weave into your final set of comments, because you're very strong on accountability. You talk about it every time you come here. It's a cursed word for your opponent. Now, I went through the Charlestown Accord over the weekend, and there are 17 promises. Only 3 have been fulfilled. Benefit a total of about a dozen people. 1, that there should be membership on the SIDF board, 1 person. That we should have diplomatic representation, missions abroad, maximum 6 people. And that we should be represented on boards. But the big, broader issues of electoral reform, the same numbers that he argued about in 2012 and 13 that he had to deal with in St. John's, for instance, it's the same thing now, a decade after. So the big issues, constitutional reform, electoral reform, that would benefit everybody across the board, have not been addressed. But those have not been factored into the fair share. He have cornered that into one particular avenue. You think that accountability is crucial to the representation?
Well, of course, accountability is crucial. It is important. It's one of those things that I think that has eluded this present administration. They've just acted lawless. They have not been answering questions. They have not been true to what they said their mission statement was, and they've just not delivered to the people. They went to Bastille without an agenda, really. Going with just the Charlestown Accord, which was just something to facilitate them getting into power, is one thing, but they've not really used it as leverage for the people of Nevis either. Accountability is a long, I think it requires a little more than just a snapshot. So that is an issue that I'm quite prepared to, at least for us to defer until we come back, because there are a lot of issues related to the way that government has been run here on Nevis, and because of the lack of accountability, why Nevisians are suffering at this point in time. And I think going into the elections, Nevisians have to be cognizant of the fact that these guys, you just can't trust them. You just can't trust them. If you're coming up short, the thing is, I think he was trying to respond to the question that has been constantly asked: what happened to the 400 million? What happened to the 400 millions? And he even went to the extent to fabricate, projects that would not have been really captured, rightly so, in the accounting that he was trying to do. Obviously, trying to confuse people, because when he was asked the question, and he's going to say, the generators, the Wärtsilä generators and stuff like that would have been factored into the 400 million, and then just a couple of weeks ago he would have told us that those are loans. Those kind of things. You can't trust the information that you're getting, from the source. And we have a lot of things to do, and we have just not been getting the audited reports that we ought to be getting from statutory bodies. Those kind of things. The lack of accountability is, I think, something that is almost like a pandemic throughout that administration. It is really an endemic in that administration. And so there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, and we're going to have to hold their feet to the fire It is true that he is no longer the Foreign Affairs Minister, so we can't expect that he would deliver anything now. He has not delivered in 7 years. He's not likely going to be delivering anything now. It is just time for us to reset, time for us to turn things around, time for us to set our course on a different level now, with a different captain, because this captain has not delivered. He has left us stranded, and it's time for us to abandon ship.
And find a new direction.
Find a new direction.
That's our show, Your Voice with the NRP, for Monday, June the 13th. We'll be back with you next week with other candidates going up for the federal election on July 15th. Sound like the Prime Minister, right?
Yeah, but I'm sorry you didn't give me...
Your voice, your voice, your voice with the NRP. This and every Monday, 8:30 to 10 p.m. Join host Stephen Semanas and the NRP candidates as they amplify your voice.
The views and opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.